Over the past few years, I've spent a huge amount of time reflecting on what's good for me, what's bad for me, and how I can take action to create the most sustainable, productive, and enjoyable existence for myself on a day-to-day basis. With that in mind, I've narrowed it down to 8 key points to consider that I have found most beneficial from my end that you can apply at yours so that you can do the very same. I won't be overly prescriptive in this video. It's not something I like to do on the channel, but if I can be prescriptive, the one thing I will say that I've found a huge amount of reward from, and I know others have too, is getting up at the same time every day. It gives you clear structure to work within, and for those of you that are immediately on the defense because you've got lots of things going on, you might work shifts and that doesn't apply to you, obviously that context is important, but if we can create as predictable a pattern as possible, it will give us the best chance to work with rather than against our basic human biology. If you go to the doctors and you're struggling with your mental health, one of the first questions they'll ask you is what your sleeping pattern looks like, because it can have a huge impact on our mood, cognitive ability, performance, all of the things that really underpin productivity in general. And that's why it's so important to keep on top of it and be proactive rather than preventative when it comes to managing it on a day-to-day basis. So really be aware of how you respond to alcohol before bed, how you respond to reading before bed, how you respond to working late or traveling, all these things that go on, and try and create as predictable, consistent, and regular a pattern as possible. But most importantly, take lessons from when you don't feel great and apply them to things moving forwards, because the only way we can continue to be the best version of ourselves on a day-to-day basis is by building bricks on bricks on bricks over time and making sure that we take action when we are given data and sort of tangible feelings or mood changes to act upon. So the second point to consider today is the daily highlight, brackets or a variation of, as I will explain shortly. It's a concept I first heard from Ali Abdaal. Whether he created it or just referred to it in a YouTube video, I'm not quite sure, but I heard it a few years ago and then put my own spin on it. The daily highlight essentially recommends that you take one key focused task per day and you make that the non-negotiable. Everything beyond that is a bonus. It's a might get to, but if you can prioritize each day into one thing that must be done, then that is the daily highlight. And that allows you to have clearer priorities within the context of a day. But as I do things across industries, have different priorities in different areas, I felt like it was a bit one-dimensional. So I did the incredibly creative, incredibly innovative sort of decision-making process of making it 3 daily priorities. And every morning I will come through here, more or less, whether it's at the office or in here, and I will write 1, 2, 3 on a piece of paper, and I will lay out the 3 clear priorities for the day. And if there are things that are difficult to keep control of, or I'm struggling to make it only 3, then I will send an email saying I can't get to something as quickly as I maybe said I could. I will try and delegate to others. I will maybe put some things off or push some things back. I won't just sit there and let the to-do list overwhelm me. And that means that if I can't prioritize into 3 things each and every morning, then I'm arguably taking on too much. I need to restructure, I need to reshuffle, I need to look at things differently, etc., etc., etc. And with that in mind, the overarching message here is look at what you have to do within the context of a day, week, month, and prioritize, which sounds like I'm teaching you to suck eggs. Don't want it to come across that way, but the more that we can actually realistically look at what needs done today, what can be done tomorrow, what can be done when I can get to it, and then create a hierarchy that means that you can be as pragmatic and focused and productive on a day-to-day basis as possible, the more control you will have over the dreaded to-do list, which can ultimately just become never-ending pits of despair and pen ink, ultimately. So the daily highlight, whether that's 1 thing, 3 things, 5 things, or just you taking a bit more of a focused look at your to-do list and being clearer with your priorities, whatever that looks like to you, the individual watching this video right now with your own set of circumstances, do that. Point number 3 is a bit of a cliche. It is to eat the biggest frog first. And by that, I mean exercise first thing in the morning. Why am I being a bit prescriptive when I normally wouldn't be? Well, let me tell you, my friends. It's because I believe in the chaos of the world that we live in. One of the most productive things that we can do is daily exercise. One of the most productive things we can do within that context is doing it first thing. Because what we don't want to be doing is rolling out of bed and seeing an email from our boss saying, you said you were going to have this to me by 6 a.m. because I sent it to you at 9 p.m. last night and now my boss is breathing down my neck, and your mind starts going and you start feeling that stress. If you can get out of bed, you can get yourself ready, you can get some training, some exercise, some endorphins flowing, and then you can see the boss that you hate peppering you with emails, then you've had a nice, chaotic, mind-free start to the day, which is a great way to set you up to be focused within the parameters of working hours on a day-to-day basis, and you've boxed it off. Because as the stress of the day builds, as the unpredictables happen, as the trains are delayed, the petrol stations are out of diesel, whatever it might be, and you get to the gym that evening, you might have had some of your energy, your excitement, or your desire to do it sucked away from you, which means the quality will drop, the execution will drop, you might even not turn up, you might even sack it off, go home and order a Domino's. All of these things are very human behaviors. I've been there myself in the past, but by trying to prioritize, linking back to point number 2, your exercise first thing in the morning, it gives you a great way to get yourself started without getting sucked into the chaos of the day-to-day existence that we all operate within, maybe before your kids are up, whatever it might be. And that way you've boxed off a big win before the rest of the day even starts. And I don't want to be labeled as toxic and you must get up at stupid o'clock to be able to do this, but whatever you can do, even if it's just a walk outdoors with the dog, whatever it might be, to get yourself some movement, moving meditation, whatever you want to call it, then that is a great way to start the day, in my humble opinion. Okay, so point number 4 is an oxymoron, inherently, as it is to plan your spontaneity. And I know what you must be thinking, Fergus, you must be the life and soul of the stag do. Well, cuff me, for I am guilty. But all jokes aside, what I mean by this is to take time blocking as a pretty commonly spoken about thing on the internet in a productivity setting from a workflow point of view and apply it to a social day-to-day lifestyle point of view. So by this I mean, obviously if you're watching this video, you're probably looking to be the best version of yourself on a day-to-day basis, as I am. You're wanting to squeeze all of the blood out of the stone from a workload, from a personal development, from a training point of view, and just feel like you're moving forwards. That can often become quite chaotic. It's easy to say no to a lot of things, which is sometimes the right thing to do, but it's easy to just get stuck in the pattern of always looking for more, always sort of packing as much into the day as you can, and missing out on things that actually are probably quite good for you, that you might enjoy. And that's why I personally have seen a huge amount of value of actually putting in my calendar from 7 till 9 p.m. on Wednesday, I'm going for dinner with Erin at this location at this time. On this weekend in this month, I am seeing my family at their house down here. Whatever it might be, if there's things that I enjoy, I don't fear them as opportunities to derail the day-to-day, but rather I plan the day-to-day through the 3 priorities and all of the stuff we've discussed so far, so that I can time block in social events, downtime, unwinding, de-stressing, whatever you want to call it, and give myself permission to enjoy them and get the most out of them, rather than the other way around when I try and be spontaneous when I'm busy, when I'm stressed, and I end up punishing myself for feeling like I've made a mistake or not being present at each event because it's got in the way of the work, or I might be a little bit hungover tomorrow, or this has affected my sleeping pattern, or I'm gonna not be able to get back to this person by the end of the day because I need to travel to this place. And you can then punish yourself for simply being a human being that's spending time with people you like spending time with, doing things that you enjoy doing. So by allocating time to both work and social life and family, etc., you are therefore taking total control of all of the things that are good for you, and that will pay dividends over time. One more thing I want to add on to that point is how, from a personal point of view, one of the things that's impacted my day-to-day productivity the most is reducing my overall alcohol intake. And I've actually practically done that by replacing the it's been a long week beers, the barbecue beers, the mowing the lawn on a Sunday beers, and the, you know what, the sun's out, we live in Britain, let's have some beers, with non-alcoholic ones. Namely, Days Lager and Pale Ale, because as a Brit, the ceremony of a beer is very important to me. And I do enjoy exactly that. So previously, where I would have reached for the aforementioned forms of specific beers, I now keep a fully stocked fridge of Days, which means that I can have all the ceremony of a beer without any of the downsides, which are a reduced quality of sleep, therefore compromised recovery, affected hydration, which obviously isn't part and parcel of trying to be a sustainably progressive athlete, along with the residual hangover effects, which unfortunately, even at this stage of my life, can be from as little as a single alcoholic beverage. And that's not to say that I'm not consuming alcohol. As I've already mentioned, if we go back to the previous point, there will be times that I will block out social occasions to not drink Days, because I'll be drinking alcoholic beers and maybe dare I say, a couple of them. But when I'm not, you will catch me on a regular basis drinking Days Lager or Pale Ale, and if you would like to try some yourself so that you can also experience all of the benefits that I have from reducing my overall alcohol intake on a week-by-week, day-by-day basis, then there is a link in the description down below for you to save yourself some money off. And for point number 5, I'm going to coin the phrase liquid management, and by that I mean your hydration levels and your caffeine consumption. Now, I don't want to insult your intelligence by telling you that to be productive, you want to stay hydrated, but to be productive, you want to stay hydrated. And that doesn't simply mean consuming water. When it's hot outside, when you're training hard, if you've been a bit sweaty overnight for whatever reason, then replacing your electrolyte balance is something that a lot of us might miss in our day-to-day habits, supplementation, and hydration considerations. So simply by putting some electrolytes into one of our servings of water that day and replenishing our balance that can be lost through a whole myriad of things that most productivity-focused people could well be doing, you should be mitigating a lot of the negative effects that come from being dehydrated, as long as you're obviously consuming enough liquids as you go. If your training volume is higher, then you'll be needing more. If you're at a desk most of the day, then you might not need as much. But from that point of view, simply adding some electrolytes into your hydration considerations could go a long way in cognitive ability and overall hydration levels, and therefore performance. As well as this, it's important to consider caffeine, as a lot of us use caffeine as a crutch rather than as a tool. And the cycle of I'm tired, therefore I'm going to have caffeine, which is going to therefore compromise my quality of sleep because I am tired, that then means that we're going to reach for coffee and energy drinks in the morning, which then means that we're not going to sleep very well because we still have caffeine in our system, which means that we're then tired. And the cycle repeats. It's pretty common in a corporate setting, in a day-to-day setting, if we're traveling, whatever it might be. So what I recommend is a caffeine curfew, where you essentially give yourself enough time to let caffeine leave your system before bed. The half-life of caffeine is 5 hours, but if you've had 400 milligrams of caffeine in a pre-workout, or you've had a coffee and then a monster not long afterwards, you could have that in your system for up to 10 hours, which means that if you have 400 milligrams of caffeine at midday, it will still be in your system at 10 p.m. So what we don't want to be doing is going to sleep with caffeine in our system, because whether you get to sleep or not, the quality of sleep that you have will be impacted by the caffeine in your system. And what we also don't want to do is we don't want to reach for it first thing in the morning, because the adenosine system's barely even started, and that means that there is really not much for caffeine to do other than to sort of give us that scratch itch to be able to get on with the rest of our day. So the phrase, "don't talk to me until I've had my morning coffee," should be done away with if you are wanting to be as productive as you can. And what you should rather be doing is focusing on improving your sleeping pattern and bedtime habits first and foremost. Caffeine should be a tool, not a crutch. It should not be something that we rely upon or need to feel like we're awake. It should instead be something we use to enhance our day-to-day around a healthy sleeping pattern. Hello there. It's probably time for point number 6, which is to set some time aside for reading. And I'm not going to list off a whole load of pseudo-intellectual benefits, but what I am going to say is quite similar to eating your largest frog first, our point from earlier, which is amidst the chaos of our day-to-day in the modern world, going to bed, it's quite difficult sometimes to switch off and let our minds settle. And one of the ways that I like to do that is by allocating some time before bed to read. So whether that is a fiction or a non-fiction choice of text, in this case, it's this handsome gentleman here on a magazine that's unfortunately no longer available, but normally I choose fiction so I can immerse myself in an alternative reality before bed so that I can forget about all of the chaos and the emails and the cock-ups and the missed appointments and the phone calls and the dreariness of day-to-day that can sometimes go on. And it's just a good way to decompress your mind a little bit so you can go to bed with a little bit less spinning and therefore improve your quality of sleep. So it's tied into a few of the other points, but I think reading, from a personal point of view anyway, has been a great way for me to just calibrate a little bit to improve my overall productivity on a day-to-day basis, mainly through giving myself the chance to switch off and sleep a little bit better. So is it a new point really, or is it just contributing to a previous point? You can decide. Point number 7, I'm going to suggest that we should make a conscious effort to do more of our exercise outdoors. I don't know about everybody else, but in the UK and some parts of the USA that I've been to, there is a real tendency to rely on a gym setting or the indoors for our exercise, which is obviously fantastic in many ways, but I think once you reach a certain level of competency and confidence in that arena, there should be more time allocated to reap the rewards of being outdoors, seeing the sunrise, breathing in fresh air, letting your mind wander with places you've not been before, brackets as long as you're in a place that's safe enough to do so and it's not too dark and dangerous, obviously. From a personal point of view, psychologically, it gives me a great way of not being in a highly stimulating environment with lights and music and other people, and instead gives me an opportunity, like reading, to switch off a little bit from all of the things that are in my head, because I don't want to make it sound like I've got voices in my head at this point, but we all know what it's like. Every day, things can go wrong, things can go well, but there's a lot happening, especially if you're trying to be hyper-focused on your productivity. And sometimes that can be quite hard to just sort of completely put to the side and just, I'm going to sound very, very sort of Californian here, but just be present with whatever you're doing. And that's where I found exercising outdoors. It makes me appreciate the surroundings I'm in. It allows me to settle a little bit after a busy day or before a busy day. And I think a combination of outdoor training and indoor training is a fantastic way for us to hone in on the most productive version of ourselves. And for our 8th and final point today, it is to do hard things. And I appreciate that might be a little bit of a controversial point given the seeming need for extremes online at the moment and potentially the negative behavior patterns that can spawn out of those. But no, what I am suggesting is simply to commit to things that are scary, intimidating, challenging, stressful to us within a controlled environment on our terms so that we can essentially expose our vulnerabilities and learn things from them. The biggest personal development piece for me over the past 5 years has been continually building my sort of athletic CV by taking on harder and harder, scarier and scarier, more and more demanding things because they've been terrifying. They've been hard to make work. It's put a lot of stress on me personally. It's put a lot of stress on my systems from a business point of view, from a productivity point of view. And through navigating said hard thing, I found solutions that I've carried with me to better outcomes further down the line. So unless you stress test your productivity systems, unless you stress test yourself, you're not going to grow, you're not going to develop. This doesn't mean that you need to sell all your worldly possessions, move to some part of the world where you can become a monk and then only ever run 100-milers every weekend for the rest of your life. But it means that by committing to taking a step into uncertainty, into the unknown, into the difficult, you will expose yourself to challenge, which will better prepare you for challenge. And therefore, when work demands, family demands, personal demands spike, you have more experience in dealing with them. Simple as that. And it should go without saying that this doesn't just apply to the space of fitness, even though that's the lens that I generally present it through on this channel here, but it can be through whatever is your focus point in life, whether it's learning a new skill, learning the piano, learning a new language, whatever it might be, something that's intimidating, scary, but you feel is right or within reach. There is no failure in that context. There are only lessons. And that might sound like the biggest cliche possible, but a lot of these concerns that we have around these situations come from a place of fear rather than a place of reality. And in my opinion, the worst case scenario by taking on something that's intimidating or scary for us is that we might fall a little bit short of our expectations, but we'll have a lot better an understanding of ourselves, of how to go at it next time, how to apply the learnings from that set of circumstances to other areas of our life, and overall we will be a better person. Exposing your weaknesses is the best way to develop. It's why athletes have strength and conditioning. It's why political leaders will do lots of specialist training to be able to handle PR conversations along with geopolitical nuanced considerations with borderlines. And it's why the military will spend so much time doing different courses in different areas, because if they're weak at one, that is something that they can improve on, which will make them better overall. They might not pass first time, but when they go at it second time, they'll have a lot more information to try and pass the second time round. So the more you can expose yourself to difficult things, whatever that means to you, it could be running to the lamppost at the end of your road. If that's intimidating you, that's what you should try and commit to doing. Don't compare your difficult to somebody else's difficult, but what you should be doing is reflecting upon what's exciting and intimidating to you so that you can set a plan of action to work towards it, because there is only going to be a better version of yourself overall, as well as from a productivity perspective at the back end. So do hard things. And there we have it. 8 points to consider on how you can improve your productivity through the lens of my own experience. So if you do have anything to add or anything you'd like to counter or reflect on through your own experience, stick it in the comments down below. And whilst you're on your way down there, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and just ding the bell icon whilst you're down there as well. I hope there's been some food for thought in there at the very least. And if you are still here at this point, thank you very much. Please do share your thoughts below, and I will see you next time.